This is Gene DeLisio with a featured sports interview from WDLB and WOSQ. One of the premier tennis players in Marshfield Tiger history is Jeff Hardacre, who was a four-time MVP with the Tiger tennis team in the late 1980s. Jeff was a four-time state qualifier, a four-time Wisconsin Valley Conference champion, and he teamed with Chris Opitz to earn third place in doubles at the 1988 state tournament. Jeff was also ranked as a top 10 player in Wisconsin and a top 50 player in the Midwest during the 1987 tennis season. He was inducted into the Marshfield Tiger Athletic Hall of Fame in 2013.
It's a tremendous honor for me to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Marshfield has a great tradition of athletics and academics and public support for its various programs. It's really been an honor to accept this award for not only me, but for all of my teammates and all of the coaches that taught us.
And you had a great tennis career at Marshfield High School. First of all, how did that all begin? How did you get involved, first of all, in the sport of tennis?
I have three older brothers and sisters that are 8 to 10 years older than me, all of whom played tennis. And when they would play tennis in the summers, I would go down with a racket half-sized and hit tennis balls against the backboard. And in our neighborhood, we had a number of kids that played tennis. We had groups of 8 or 10 or 12 play every day during the summer. And it just took off from there. And we had good fortunes to have parents allow us to play tennis throughout the state and the Midwest. And so that's what we really took a liking to, myself and all of my friends.
That's interesting because I recall growing up in a neighborhood with lots of kids. We played baseball every day. We played football every day. I don't know of many neighborhoods where they played tennis every day. It had to be a very unusual situation. What were the circumstances that brought so many tennis fans together in one neighborhood?
I'm not sure what the exact circumstance was. I will say that we still played lots of softball and baseball and football, but everybody seemed to have a liking for tennis. Tennis was very popular at the time, I think, in the world, with the matchups between Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe, and then getting into Boris Becker, Yvonne Lendl. I don't know exactly what it was that brought tennis to our neighborhood, but it was really something that we liked.
Can you recall some of the early competition that you were involved with, probably maybe 5th, 6th, 7th grade? And at one point did you realize, I'm pretty good at this sport?
Well, one thing that I remember quite vividly was playing in the 12 and under division, I believe at the age of 7, against Mike Opitz, who's actually my best friend's older brother. He beat me pretty soundly. He was 12, I was 7 at the time, but I guess it didn't deter me. So that was one of my formative moments. Then throughout the grade school and junior high years, it was just playing with all of the older kids. Again, I hung around with, in terms of my tennis, all kids that were older than I was. So it was always a bit of a challenge for me and a point of pride to see if I could beat them.
You got to high school, made an immediate impact on Marshfield Tiger tennis. Can you talk about some of the memories you have of your Tiger tennis career?
The memories that I have, I had wonderful teammates. From coming in as a freshman and being the number one player, I think I was treated like one of the guys, not as somebody special. And then as I grew through the ranks and had to become more of a mentor to some of the younger players, we were a great group of friends on the tennis court, off the tennis court. We took trips for our team down to Florida during spring break. The most memorable part is the camaraderie. We had a lot of fun playing in our meets, but it was the camaraderie, the whole experience.
You talked a lot about the coaches that you had, junior high through high school. Tell us about some of those people and what they meant to your development.
Well, certainly the most important coaches would be Coach Swenson and Coach Kaler for my tennis development, for my development as a human being, my development as a student, but also my coaches in football and basketball, Coach Fagan, Coach Putzi, Coach Zofi, Coach Verwink, Coach Luxinger, and then some of the people that I now see on the sidelines, Jimmy McDonald, Scott Scheuer, Scott Klein. I remember idolizing those kids when I was in junior high and early high school when they were playing basketball and football. Everything seems to come full circle.
Of course, Gary Kaler has a great reputation as an outstanding tennis coach, one of the top in the state, Hall of Fame member himself. As a former player, what made him so special as a coach?
He was able to bring out the best in all of us. We all came to the table with different skill sets, singles, doubles, a serve and volley player, a baseline player. He saw what was best about each player, was able to develop that, was able to get them on the right place in the team so that as a team, we had the best chance for success. Most people think of tennis as an individual sport, and by and large it is, but we were doing it in the context of a team effort. And there's no way that we could have done what we did had he not had the foresight to see how our pieces fit into that team puzzle.
Now, many of our fans may not understand this, but your high school tennis career is probably only a slice of the tennis you played during those years. Mm-hmm. One of those sports where you're going all over the place during the off season. Tell us about that and how you handled that situation, playing in so many off-season tournaments and events.
Well, the United States Tennis Association sanctions tournaments all throughout the country. And in the state of Wisconsin, of course, most of them are going to be in the larger cities, Milwaukee, Madison, or around Green Bay and the Fox Valley. So most of the time that we spent playing tennis in the summer from the ages of 12 to 18 was in the southern part of the state or in the adjoining states. So Chris Opitz and I, my very, very dear friend, we were very fortunate to have parents with the ability to let us play in all of these tournaments and to get us to those tournaments. The summer was pretty easy. It's when the winter time came around that we had to make decisions. I'll oftentimes tell people that I liked playing basketball probably more than I liked playing tennis. I was just better at playing tennis than I was at basketball. And after my sophomore year of high school, I was asked to represent Wisconsin in a kind of a statewide tennis program. And I talked to, at that time, Coach Luxinger about that and basketball, and we kind of both came to the conclusion that it wouldn't be fair because I would miss so many practices. It's not like I was a star basketball player, but it wouldn't really be fair for me to be on the team if I wasn't there to practice all the time. And so that was one of the decisions that we had to make, and it's one that I sometimes regret in hindsight because there's nothing like high school athletics, but I think things turned out all right.
It certainly did. Tell us about that relationship you had with some of your teammates, especially Chris.
Well, Chris and I have brothers and sisters that are close to the same age. My sister Beth and his sister Jackie were in the same high school class. Both families played tennis, and with both of our fathers being physicians, we had a lot in common. And we both took a liking to tennis at a young age. Chris was an excellent athlete, a very good football player, but we focused on tennis and really got along very well. We had different strengths, and on the tennis court and off, we had some great, great times. But there was also a lot of other people. My neighbors, the Chens, Herb and Fred, Coach Swenson's son, Steve, Dirk Mason, Pete Friedenberg, Odie Beltos. I could name 50 people that we played tennis with throughout the summer, and at the time we had very big teams. So it was a very popular sport at the time.
While we're thinking about that, most programs that I know of don't have the luxury of a guy like a Ken Swenson to coach those junior high kids for so many years and really prepare them for Coach Kaler. Tell us about Coach Swenson and what he meant to the program.
Coach Swenson was and still is, I think. I was able to sit with him tonight. He's a pretty mild-mannered man by and large, but was an excellent coach. He, like Coach Kaler, was able to bring out the best in the various aspects of all of his players' games, really emphasized the team aspect of it, emphasized the fitness, the training, not just the strokes, and it was really a very nice pipeline that Marshfield had for a long time, going from Swenson to Kaler, and it really brought a lot of success to Marshfield tennis in the 80s and 90s.
I want to ask Jeff, there was always in that era, and I guess it's still true today, the complaint that the Marshfield players are at such a great disadvantage because there's only one indoor court, you can't play year-round really. Traveling the state, did you see that as a disadvantage for you as a Marshfield player?
I think it probably is a disadvantage. I think I'd have to say honestly that I was not tremendously disadvantaged by that. I was fortunate enough to have parents that were able to allow us, Chris and I, to go to Stevens Point, to the Century Building. I remember it vividly, at least once a week for lessons. So we always had access to court time. I worked at the racket club my last 3 years of high school, so if the court wasn't being used and I was done with my homework, I could go out and hit balls with the tennis machine. So I don't think that had a great impact on us, but I think for the greater community, it'd be nice to have a few more indoor courts for people to use during the winter.
How about your high school experiences? Can you talk about some of the highlights, conference play, state play, things like that?
I think that the highlight was certainly that first conference championship that we won when I was a junior. I think Coach pointed out during the ceremony tonight, Pete Friedenberg and I were on the court for the doubles portion of our final meet. And I think that we were the last team, if I recollect. And we ended up winning, allowing us to win that meet and therefore the regular season conference championship. But the fondest memory I have is that, again, not only were we playing people during high school, we were playing them during the summer. I could name 50 people from Wausau, from Stevens Point, friends that we had, whereas during the summer we're playing tournaments together, then during the school year we're playing against each other. And it was a great situation we had.
Did you find, and maybe it's a better question to ask you now as an older gentleman, that was unusual for your sport, that rather than look upon that basketball player, that football player, that baseball player from Point Rapids, Wausau, etc., who you don't really know very well, is more or less the other guy on the other team, the enemy guy, they became more friends to you than they would have perhaps in other sports?
Yeah, it was an oddity, and in particular, the most important of them was the number one player at Wausau East, a guy named Paul Feint. He traveled with Chris and I to all of the tournaments throughout the Midwest, and we had a lot of fun times. But they were also, my last 2 years, our biggest rivals within the conference. And so it was a bit of a unique situation, but when all was said and done, they were East, we were Marshfield when it came time during the high school season. But that's it.
I do want to ask about your decision, more or less, to go to doubles your senior year in the state tournament. You and Chris went down, ranked number 1 in the state, wound up number 3 in the state, an outstanding performance for someone not in one of the major urban areas. Can you talk about what went into that decision and that tournament experience?
So playing throughout the state during the summers, Chris and I met all of the players from the big cities, got to know them very well. And my first 3 years that I went to state, I went in singles. I lost my first round as a freshman, then I won one round each as a sophomore and junior. But it was easy to see there were people that I knew that I had a good chance of beating, and I hate to say it, but there were people that I knew I would not be able to beat as a singles player. And so to try to give us Marshfield the best chance at showing ourselves well at state, that was for Chris and I to play doubles, because that would put two of the state's, top tennis players together on one team. So singles usually has a little bit more glory, a little bit more attention, but we decided to focus on doubles, and we went undefeated through the regular season tournaments, the conference, the sectional, and we went in seeded number 1, knowing that the number 3 seed team was the team that was going to be most challenging. They were a team from Nicolet, guys that were both my age that I played with a lot during the summer. They were seeded number 3 because they had lost to a team during the regular season that we had beaten during the regular season in a tournament. And we played them in the semifinals. We were up 4-2 in the first set, 4-3 in the second set, but we could not pull it together. We lost 4-4, if I recollect. And that was a kind of a disappointing experience. I remember crying outside of Nielsen Tennis Stadium, but we were able to pull ourselves together and win the third place match in 3 sets. So we made a little bit of a comeback.
Jeff, anything else about your tennis career at Marshfield High School that you want to reflect upon for us?
Marshfield is a great town. Now that I'm a parent living in Ohio, in a little bit of a bigger city, I see how tight this community is, how they support their athletics, and I think that Marshfield is a great place to grow up.
Former Marshfield Tiger tennis standout Jeff Hardacre, inducted into the Marshfield Tiger Athletic Hall of Fame in the fall of 2013. This is Gene DeLisio reporting.